Last year was my second year as a math specialist with Fort Bend ISD, and let me just say for the record, I love, love, love what I do. And I believe so much in what I do that I'm going to tell you a little story about when I learned the importance of teaching math with meaning. I was still getting used to not having my own classroom and trying to get my feet under me with this new position. I was struggling to juggle 6 different grade levels and 40 teachers, give or take a few, at 2 different campuses with 2 new principals. I was working with group after group of low-performing students, but I didn't really feel that I was making much of a difference improving their math ability, and I wasn't sure what I needed to do to change that. Until one day, midway through the school year, a group of 4th grade students came to my room for help with division. They had been working on long division for more than a week and still couldn't divide a division problem with a single-digit divisor and no more than 3 digits in the dividend. I know we chuckle at this comic, but this was pretty close to their understanding of division at this point. Their teachers were exasperated, the students were exasperated and frustrated, and frankly, I was feeling a little overwhelmed by the pressure to fix their inability to solve a division problem without getting lost in it, let alone getting to a reasonable answer or using it in a problem-solving situation. I wrote a pretty simple division problem on a whiteboard, and then I asked this group of 5 students what 432 divided by 3 said to them. What did it mean? I waited for a few seconds while the students stared at me blankly, and then I waved my hand around the problem again and said, "Anything? Does this problem say anything to you?" I was still looking into blank, helpless eyes when one of the girls lit up with a broad smile. Her eyes widened. She blurted out, "Does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers?" And she said it with all the excitement and resolve of having an actual answer that applied to this problem. The other students said with relief and with their heads nodding in eager agreement, "Yes, yes, does McDonald's sell cheeseburgers?" Well, I was a little taken aback at this point. How interesting," I said. "Tell me, how does selling cheeseburgers at McDonald's help us to divide this problem?" Again, the big smile and that knowing look. "You know, D is for divide, M is for multiply, S is for subtract, C is for compare, and B is for bring down." This was my big aha moment. They had no idea what this process meant or what they were doing with it. They had memorized a mnemonic, but there was no meaning behind it or how to apply it. I pulled out some base 10 blocks and showed them 400 flats, 3 10 rods, and 2 ones cubes. And I explained that these manipulatives were going to represent the dividend, the thing we would divide up. Then I asked them to think of the divisor as the number of groups these blocks would be divided into. I drew 3 large circles on the table and said, while pointing to the divisor, "These are your 3 groups." Then I took 3 of the 400 flats and put 1 in each group. And as I did, I explained that there were enough 100 flats to equally put 1 in each group. Then I showed them that there was 100 flat, 3 10s, and 2 ones left that we still needed to divide equally into the 3 groups. I continued to model for these students how the rest of the base 10 blocks would be divided equally into the 3 groups and how the value of each group represented the quotient. Then one boy said, "You mean that's all we have to do?" "Yes," I said. "You just think about how many groups your divisor tells you to make. Then you divide up the dividend equally into those groups. And if there are any leftovers that can't be put equally into the groups, those are called remainders." We then looked at some real-life problems that we could use division to solve. Some of these problems were partitive division, which is dividing the dividend into equal groups, and some of the problems were quotative division, which is figuring out how many of the divisor are in the dividend. And after working a few sessions with base 10 blocks, we moved back to the more efficient and traditional algorithm. They had the mechanics of division down. They knew what it looked like and what it sounded like in real-life situations. They no longer needed to sell McDonald's cheeseburgers to divide. They could now put McDonald's cheeseburgers into problem-solving situations and use division to solve those problems. I was struck by how disconnected these students had been from the math. And this wasn't as quick or simple a fix as I might have made it sound. But I'm sure you don't want me to go through every detail, and I couldn't possibly relate every nuance that unfolded in this scenario. But this is a true story about how processed food didn't help these students with division. So let's talk about processed food for a minute. I'm sure you're scratching your head about why I've gone from talking about teaching meaningful math to processed food. Well, simply put, McDonald's cheeseburgers are processed food. And nutritionists and health experts tell us to all but eliminate processed foods from our diet. Many of these fast foods taste good, they're quick, and they satisfy hunger. But in the long run, these high-sodium, fat-ridden, nutrient-deficient foods are linked to obesity, cancer, and heart disease. And at the end of the day, they harm us in some very unhealthy ways. So if you think about it, processed foods are a direct analogy to processed math. If we continue to teach foundational math as all processes without meaning, without authentic ways to use this math, the result will be math-deficient students who can't apply in any meaningful way the algorithms, rhymes, tricks, or mnemonics they have memorized. I guess you could say that that is the definition of processed math. I'd like to leave you with a couple of thoughts. First, know the math you teach, and then teach the math you know with meaning and relevance. Let's stop teaching processed math and give our students a healthier math education that will allow them a long and productive math life.